Oh, hi. Welcome back.
Hey, stop that. Last week I talked about the benefits of not using layers when drawing. But in this episode of YouTube Art School, I'll go over what is undoubtedly the world's most simple coloring method, using only 4 layers. So how to go from this to this. 4 layers. And this method actually works in any painting software. It's so simple, a baby could do it. So let's see how it's done. Let's get this class started. Alright, class is in session. Pay attention. And you also need to pay the class fee of either 1 like or 1 sub for all of this professional knowledge. If you don't do it, well, I can't check either way, I guess. So let's just get started. We'll just need a rough drawing to get started. Something like this. And my lines are a mess up close, as you can see, but I'll be covering them all by the end of it, so it really doesn't matter. But with that said, the line-less style is just my preference. So if you prefer to have your line art showing in the final result, then you should spend more time and clean up your drawing, obviously. And if you do keep it, then you'd probably have to call this method the 5-layer method, because you'll end up with that extra line art layer in the end. Not as cool. Either way, the rest of the process will be the same. So let's start by creating our first layer that we'll call flats. For this method, the line art will start on top of the layer stack, so the flats will be right below, and I'm just going to either paint it or lasso and paint bucket the silhouette of my drawing like this. Now that we have something on the flats layer, let's lock that alpha for later, and we'll actually leave that layer as is for now. We could draw all of the different colors now, but we'll probably have to readjust them later, so might as well just save ourselves some time and move on to shading for now. So of course, the second layer is going to be for the shading, so let's just call it that. And we'll want to make sure to slot that one in between our existing layers, so just above the flats layer. Now, instead of a regular layer, we'll transform this into a clipping mask, like that in Clip Studio Paint. And you can tell that it is a clipping mask now that it's turned red. This way we'll limit the area that we can paint shading on to the flats only. So if I try painting on this new shading layer, you can see that the paint is only being applied to the flats directly underneath. Alright, for this layer, we'll set the blend mode to multiply. And don't skip this part, very important. And for the shading, really, we'll want the character to feel like it has volume, almost like a 3D model, because that's gonna pay off big time later in the process. You'll see. It's not easy, but there are definitely a few things to keep in mind when working on the shading. So the first one should be to keep it relatively light, because otherwise we won't be able to see the colors underneath, right? So I'm painting with black, but I want to paint just enough to give us that 3D look, but not much more than that. The end result should feel like the ratio of lighter values is higher compared to darker value. And the second thing worth mentioning is to completely ignore colors at this stage. We want to shade our character as if it was just one color, like one single material. Don't go darkening the hair if you want your character to have dark hair or anything like that. Colors will be managed with the flats layer later in the process, not the shading layer. You got me, bro? That's important. And I know I always bring it up, but don't hesitate to use the free Magic Poser website to, get an idea of your shading if you suck at shading. Again, not sponsored, I'm just a fan. Now, since I know I'll get questions about it, to shade, I'm using my custom shading brush and the lasso tool paired with a basic soft brush for the most part. That combo is usually what's gonna allow me to do everything, and that shading brush is part of my advanced painter brush set. If you want it, I'll put the link to it in the video description. But to be fair, it's not that hard to make one yourself, so just get it if you're lazy, basically. And I will teach you how to create brushes, also how to shade, how to color, design, master storytelling, drawing in perspective, and a lot more in my complete art education program that's on sale until the end of the month. Check it out with the link in the description if you need help pushing your art to the next level. The art school program has a curriculum of 30 in-depth classes spread over 10 terms to give you a complete foundation as an artist, just like you would get with a Masters of Fine Arts, but with a heavy emphasis on digital art. You also get access to our private school Discord to kind of help mimic a real class environment. But even better, the program is cheaper than most pen display tablets with their current sale, so don't miss out on that, it's almost over. Check out the link below for hundreds of reviews from students and to find out why nearly 26,000 other artists of all skill levels have joined so far. What are you waiting for? Alright, now that my shading is done, that looks hot, we can finally go back to our flats layer and start to paint the different regions of our drawing with different colors. Oh, and I almost forgot, but I don't need my line art layer anymore now that I'm done shading, so be gone! And look how tidy this layer stack looks. And then back to colors. that step is super fun, at least to me, because you'll see the drawing really come to life with colors and shading combined. We'll be adding lighting soon also, so it's fine if your colors are a little on the dark side, but I would try to keep it around like 50% brightness. Otherwise, it might still end up being a little too dark, even after the lighting pass. But we can always easily change those colors later with some quick paint bucket action though, so don't stress about your color choices too much. All right, now we're ready to move on to the third layer, the lighting layer. We'll add this one on top of the shading layer. And just like the shading layer, we'll also make this one into a clipping mask. Here, you'll have a few options when it comes to the blend mode. Usually, I'll use hard light because it gives me more control over the result, but you might want to try overlay mode as well. I use that too sometimes. Like if your shading is a little bit more subtle, overlay might work best. But whatever, just try both and pick the one you prefer. So in my case, the light will be coming from the top as if the character was outside during the day, like lit by the sunlight. And having the lighting on its own layer is nice because you can easily try different things, like different light directions even. And if you don't like it or if you make a mistake, you just gotta erase it and try again. None of the rest of the work is impacted. Oh, and since the sunlight is usually like pretty intense, we might also be able to see the effect of subsurface scattering. And I'll spare you the physics behind it, but the result is this reddish transition that we can normally observe between the light and the shadow, on the skin specifically. Personally though, I'll just add the effect everywhere because I kind of like how it looks, even if it's inaccurate. And it's super easy in Photoshop using an outer glow layer style with these settings. Take note, but you could just manually paint it too if you're using a different software. It honestly doesn't take very long. All right, I'm digging this, but I think it might benefit from a second light source. Maybe like a bluish one to mimic the subtle diffuse light from the sky. I know I'm cheating with an extra layer here, but if this is already a lot to take in, just go with a single light source instead. It'll still look pretty awesome. And anyways, this is what we have so far. So flat colors, shading, and lighting. Looks cool, kind of. But we still have one layer to go. We're not missing much. Our final layer will be all about the finishing touches. I'll call this the materials layer because here we'll be trying to define the different materials. Wow, because so far it all kind of seems like it's just this matte material. But of course, like skin, metals, hair, etc., they all have their distinct properties. So we'll make this layer into a clipping mask as well and switch it to the hard light blend mode. And now we're ready to go. So first on the menu will be reflections. I'm going to have basically close to none for the fabrics, some for the skin, and more for her metal armor and hair. The light from the light sources is what's being reflected for the most part, so we can place those highlights accordingly, you know, like kind of facing each light source. The reflections shouldn't be just random. That already looks a lot better in my opinion, but I'm sure you'll agree that she's still missing some skin color variations, like redder lips, some blush maybe, some red on the ears, nose, and of course, we can't forget the smaller reflections like on the eyeballs, the tip of her nose, and the lips maybe. Check out the before and after. Ooh, yes. And now, you would think we're done. But you'd be wrong. There's one tiny final step. So let's go through that real quick. We're going to go back to our flat layer, select the skin color using the wand tool, so we get just the skin selected, and then we'll select the shadow layer, lock its alpha, very important, and then we'll just paint over the black shading using a really dark red color. Because check out how much more alive the skin feels now, with black, with dark red. And then you can repeat this process for different colors like I did. So here's what my shading layer looks like in the end. Much more colorful, much less muddy. So there it is. To recap real quick, flats first, then the shading, then the lighting using 1, 2, maybe 3 lights, the material properties, and then the final adjustments to the shading layer. And here you have the most optimized coloring process that I've ever come up with, and it's yours. I'm making it open source, and I hope that helped. So let me know in the comments, if you got something out of this. Share the video maybe with somebody who would benefit, and also make sure to tag me on social media if you end up giving this a shot. I really love seeing that stuff. But yeah, don't forget to slap that like button for this epic method, and I'll see you next week for another episode of YouTube Art School.